Hello and welcome to The Deep Dive. I'm Natulia Momo. Today we continue our exploration of civil discourse in a divided nation, specifically at the Thanksgiving table. 2 weeks ago on our show, we learned that political conversations with family can be more difficult than with strangers. As students head home, how can they navigate political differences while passing the potatoes? I'm joined today by Lance Peterson, a therapist and clinical social worker professor at the University of St. Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Lance, are you looking forward to Thanksgiving with your family and having conversations with them?
Yes, I am. You know, just to say it shortly, and I will say there are some political differences among us.
So, why do political or personal disagreements sometimes feel more intense at family gatherings?
I think a lot can be happening with this. When we head into the Thanksgiving holiday, most of us are pretty frazzled from what's been happening at work, what's been happening at school, whatever the case might be, and so it's not as intuitive as it sounds to take a break. Our bodies may not be quite ready for that, and so and then there's these expectations we have of things, you know, going a certain way, and you know we're not gonna have problems while we're doing this, you know, while we're trying to engage in dinner together. And then inevitably we're human and things come up. And then I think when that meets our maybe too high of expectations of things going really smoothly, it can be really problematic for us.
How often do you hear from people who want to stay connected with family but they feel ignored or hurt in these difficult conversations?
That's interesting you bring that up. I actually was just talking with my students about this last night, and many of them said that they have just decided to really kind of not bring up conversations at the dinner table because they've been trying for long enough that it doesn't feel fruitful to them, so they just kind of stopped doing it. And what I heard from my students, at least, and what I think does happen is, you know, people end up making a decision about what's more important, our ideologies or our relationship. And I know from people I've heard from, they typically will choose the relationship over the ideology.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to stay connected even when a conversation gets tense?
I would say, so this is if you're at the dinner table, right? I would say even if a conversation gets tense, to be transparent about that process that's happening. You know, I'm starting to feel myself get a little aggravated, or I feel myself getting tensed up, or the atmosphere feels a little tense in here, wondering if we can maybe change topics, or if it would be, or if there's a different way we can approach the topic we're talking about. And then to frame it as, you know, we come from different experiences. Even though we're family, we come from different experiences, and we've been going through different things, and consequently, whatever experiences we have will inform the way we think about the world and about our politics. And I think even just that acknowledgement can go a long ways in helping sort of de-escalate a situation.
When a family member just isn't interested in being civil, how can someone still stay grounded and maintain their sense of calm?
That's a really great question. I think what is key in that situation is, as much as you can, try to muster some deep breaths in the moment. Just try to sort of ground yourself, you know, remind yourself that when I say remind yourself, really when you're taking a deep breath, you're kind of telling your body it's okay to be calm in this situation. This is not a situation where I have to go into fight, flight, or freeze. And ultimately, it might be as simple as saying, I know this is really important to you. I'm really not willing to talk about this the way that we're talking about it. And I would say at that point, if the person continues to try to engage in that way, then you might have to make a choice about whether or not you can stay engaged in that. And my advice there is, you haven't created the problem, And not to say that the other person's created the problem per se, but that they are acting, behaving in such a way that you're not willing to engage. And it's okay to set that boundary and to be good to yourself that way.
So when conflict arises, what can be done to de-escalate the situation?
I come back to the earlier answer about just being transparent about the process. I'm noticing tension we're having right now, and this is feeling like a little bit much for me. I would rather we talk about something else. So you can and you can change topics, and if it's uncomfortable to be that transparent about it, just to even change topics. And a lot of times family members will go along with that. I can say my wife is really good at that. If she starts seeing tension at the table, she does not like political discourse that starts getting tense, and she'll change the topic. And if you have enough family members with ADHD, it works out really well, because what happens is people are very willing to change the topic, and that just happens to be the case in our family. But I do think if you show genuine interest, even if you're changing the topic, but you show genuine interest in something else about their life, that they'll typically go with that. I had a somewhat recent experience with, oddly enough, an Uber driver that had very different politics than I had. And at some point, I had said something as simple as, I'd said something as simple as, well, we tend not to see this the same way. He clearly was taken aback by that and had said something along the lines of, well, I guess I should just shut up now. And it was clear that something had happened there, some breach had happened. And ultimately, what I did was asked him about, what he'd done in his life, besides being an Uber driver. Found out he was an educator, and it helped kind of calm the situation in the moment. So that can be helpful to do something like that.
So if a conversation gets heated quickly and it doesn't get resolved, how can families repair the relationship, and what routines can help them build healthier communication moving forward?
Can you say the first part of that question again?
Yes. If a conversation gets heated quickly and doesn't get resolved, how can families repair the relationship?
Okay, so I would say the biggest thing that I can think of is just to say, look, our relationship is not worth it to me to disagree this strongly about something, to where we're not, talking with each other. That's not something that I prefer to have happen. I think too, as far as routines in the future, I think it's really important, if you can do this, to help all family members sort of own their own experience. And so when you bring your politics to the table, so to speak, grounded in your experience, and say something like, well, this is what I believe, and here's the reason I believe this. These are the experiences I've had. These are the things I've read about, or I've understood from friends, or whatever it might be. And so here's why I've kind of arrived to this place. And then I think it's really important to show genuine interest in someone else's position and say, I'm curious what you believe and think, and how did you get to that place? Because once you ground it in people's experience is something we can't argue with, right? You can argue about how people may interpret their experience, but ultimately they get the option of interpreting their own experience. And I think when you do that, it can create healthier conversations, because it can help you both stay grounded in the fact that you are coming from different worldviews very honestly.
Thank you so much, Lance, for coming in today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Follow along at thecrest.news and follow us on social media at The Crest News for more stories from your campus community. With Professor Lance Peterson, I'm Natulia Momo. We'll see you next time we deep dive.